Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Now please subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and leave that donation for that fried rice and chicken wings. Now listen, man. Jaron Ennis and Brian Norman Jr. Looks like they're finally a step closer to firming up a fight date for the fight to take place in November. And I'm going to tell you, I think this is as competitive of a fight that you can make for Jaron Ennis at 147 outside of Cavalli Oscars. Stan Ennis will come and fight, but I think Boots tranquilizes him. Stan Ennis has the kind of style that I think is perfectly suited for Boots. If Boots keeps his hands up and doesn't, get into a mash-up, crash-up type fight, where he wants to exchange and allow Stan Ennis to land some hard shots on him. Jaron Ennis and Mario Barrios. I think it's an interesting fight, but I think Boots just puts the bing-bings on him, okay? But Barrios can fight. Now, Brian Norman Jr. is a kind of wild card. He and Boots know each other, spent time together in the gym. Seem like the families know each other as well. But for Brian Norman Jr., that's kind of the wild card to me. Now, Boots is the favorite, which, he should be. But for Brian Norman Jr., I'm going to be honest. I'm not really sure what direction the fight goes. But I think Boots beats him. Just on what I've seen of Boots and what I've seen of Brian Norman Jr., I think stylistically, with the fact that Boots can box, he's long, he's powerful, he's a switch hitter. I think he can control the pace, and if he decides to pick it up, I think he can. And I think he can hurt Brian Norman Jr. But Brian Norman Jr. shocked me. He shocked me, I ain't gonna lie. That fight against Alexis Rocha. I mean, not Rocha, the guy who beat Rocha, Santillan. Because Santillan, when I saw him fight Rocha, I said, ain't nobody beating this dude. Like, I ain't never seen nobody fight like that, I'll be honest with you. I was like, that shit seemed like a cartoonish, like it didn't seem real. The amount of punches and type of punches that Santillan was throwing, I mean, hooks in rapid succession. I'm talking about 9, 10 hooks, uppercuts. I mean, I never seen nothing like that. It's like he was just a kid at a playground, just having a good-ass time. And Rocha, of course, took the fight. Didn't have as much time as he would like to really get into shape for the fight. But the bottom line is, Rocha was totally overwhelmed. So you fast forward now to see that Norman Jr. was able to stop Santillan. That carries a lot of weight with me. But also, there are fans that are trying to make this to an East Coast versus the South type fight. Now, I don't think a fighter, if they're from the East Coast, they're tougher than a fighter from the South. I don't think a fighter who's from the South is tougher from a fighter from the East Coast. I mean, what are we getting into here? You know what I'm saying? If you're from the South, from Atlanta, you're from Georgia, Alabama, wherever you're from, Florida, if you want to Mississippi, if you want to support the guy from the South, cool. But when I see fans out here talking about, like my guy right here says, I want this fight made this year to shut these down south dudes the hell up. Now, when I read that, I said, God damn, we got a little East Coast, South Coast beef going on. Somebody gonna run up on somebody, man, and start licking shots or biting each other, you know what I'm saying? This East Coast, West Coast now. Good thing Suge Knight and them boys locked up, you know what I'm saying? What we gonna have here? Anyway, he continues to say, now all of a sudden, dudes from down south shitting on Philly. I don't want no stay busy fights or anything. Let's go straight into the unification. I was feeling Brian Norman, but all this Philly slander has to stop. Please make this fight to bring these dudes back down from whatever high they're on, shaking my head. Now my thing is this, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to come out here and try to talk life into the fight and show some kind of self belief. And I think that's what Brian Norman Jr. is doing. I listen to his dad. His dad, I listen to Brian Norman Jr. They seem to be very respectful, but at the same time, you can tell they're like, yo, you're not going to lie on us, bully us, you're not going to intimidate us. But obviously, there's some respect there. The Boots camp must have enabled the Normans to help to improve their skill level and their profile by affording them some sparring and stuff like that out there in Philly where they said they went to. So that's why I think even when the father sounded frustrated at the suggestion that they were ducking Boots Ennis, putting duck sauce on the fried rice. That's why even though they were like, hey, look, it's nothing against Boots Ennis and them personally, this is just business. It's BS. We want to fight. We're not afraid of anyone. Nobody's a boogeyman. It's all love, all respect. But this is just business. We want to fight. I said, okay, that's got to be what it is. So the guys from Philly, the way I'm seeing it, they're like, nah, ain't no guy from the South gonna beat us. But then you got this guy right here. He says he won't beat Brian Norman Jr. Then he puts FACTS, an acronym. I don't know what that means, but he goes, you know, again, I don't know the FACTS, facts. I don't know, maybe that's an acronym. Somebody can help me understand what that means. So then you got the guys here from the South who are like, yeah, he ain't beating Brian Norman Jr. Boots isn't beating Brian Norman Jr. So I want to see if the fight gets announced, if this is going to evolve into like East Coast versus the South rivalry, the dirty versus Philly, Killa Philly versus the dirty. Because I'm telling you, this shit can get ugly. They got fools from Philly, and they got fools from down south. And I just think Norman Jr. and Boots Ennis, they're going to keep it clean and respectful. It's always the people outside of the fighters that start stirring the pot. And normally they put a lot of shit in the pot. And when you stir that shit and it gets hot, it stinks very badly, right? So let's see what direction this goes. Part of me feels like Eddie Hearn doesn't really want Boots to fight Brian Norman Jr. That's just how I see it. Now, if you ask me, Hood Champion, what do you think? Who do you think wins? I think it's only right for Boots to be the favorite. But Brian Norman Jr. is a wild card, and he should be. Now, there were a concentric few who predicted Brian Norman Jr. would get in there and tranquilize Santion. I wasn't one of them because I really didn't know much about Brian Norman Jr. I knew he could fight, but I didn't see him coming off of a superstar performance against anyone. I saw Santion coming off of a superstar performance. So I was like, shit, with a guy with that kind of momentum fighting like that, it's got to give Santion the nod. And that's not what happened. So in this case, I'm looking at Boots Ennis and how he performed against Evanescence. Wasn't quite a superstar performance, but he got the job done. So that's why I say I think he deserves the nod against Brian Norman Jr. because of what I would say the work that we've seen from him. You know what I mean? When Jaron Boots Ennis has gotten in the ring, we've seen him box, counterpunch. We've seen him brawl. We've seen him cut the ring up. We've seen Jaron Boots Ennis do everything. For me, I think Brian Norman Jr.'s last fight is the first fight where I think, for me, I saw him really show that, okay, there's some depth to this dude. As a result, going into this fight, I think it's only right that you give the edge to Jaron Boots Ennis, but because of how he looked, he didn't look spectacular, but because we know he can be, I'm giving him the edge. But as a result of him not looking spectacular in his last fight and Brian Norman Jr. looking spectacular in his last fight, I'm saying shit. Brian Norman Jr. is the wild card. He may come and upset the apple cart. Eddie Hearn can't afford to have that happen. Eddie Hearn got all his eggs in one basket. Man, if Boots loses in a tough fight, Eddie Hearn gonna sit there and start crying. If Shakur Stevenson loses in a tough fight, Eddie Hearn gonna start crying. If Edgar Berlanga loses to Canelo in a tough fight, Eddie Hearn gonna start crying. Eddie Hearn is all over the goddamn place right now. Now, if his fighters are fighting his fighters, Eddie Hearn doesn't care. But when his fighter's fighting somebody else's fighter, that's where Eddie Hearn, you notice he gets more emotional than anything. He'll sit back, man, and his tongue will fall out of his mouth and wrap around his head, drag across his scalp, and saliva will splash in all four corners of the goddamn room. But that being said, East Coast versus the South. Killer Philly versus the Dirty Dirty. I just hope nobody run up on somebody and start biting them and shit. Just let the fighter do their thing in the ring. But I want to see what happens, boy, if they announce this fight. What's going to happen? I already see that there's a potential for these guys to start talking a little trash, especially since they've had some experience with each other sparring. And word is, Jaron has made Brian Norman Jr. quit. Now, is that true? I don't know. But, several sources. I'm not going to say they're credible sources or not, because only the fly on the wall knows. And if the fly on the wall could talk, then, we'd have something. But credible sources are saying, hey, Boots is that guy when it comes to this fight with Brian Norman Jr. And you're going against Boots. You want to lose money. So let's see what happens. Killer Philly versus the Dirty Dirty. Y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. In the breeze.